Welcome to Treon's Realm. Today we're going to take a look at the physical version of Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair on the Nintendo Switch. For those who don't know, the company Playtonic is actually made up of a lot of former Rare developers. Yes, the same Rare who made games like Donkey Kong Country and Banjo Kazooie. Now, while those IP are no longer available to them, the team got together and created a new franchise that carries on the spirit of both of those games. That series is Yooka-Laylee. Now, while the first release was channeling Banjo Kazooie, Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair is channeling Donkey Kong Country. And while this might be a little bold, I would actually put it on par, if not a little bit above, the modern versions of Donkey Kong Country that have come out of retro. That's not to say that those are bad, I just personally really like the Impossible Lair. Now, if you've played any of the Donkey Kong Country series, you've got an idea of what you're in for with this game. But it does bring some new stuff to the table, which I really appreciated. In particular, I really like the fact that the overworld, instead of it just being a simple point-to-point map to get you from level to level, it's an actual overhead adventure-style hub that feels kind of like Zelda, complete with obstacles that you have to overcome and areas that you have to unlock. On top of that, they have this really cool feature that the bulk of the levels in the game usually have two different variations based on what you do in the overworld. Now, while I could go on and on about it, I would personally just recommend downloading the demo that they have on the eShop. It gives you enough of the game that'll tell you if you're going to like it or not. Now, when it comes to the physical version of the game, the base version clocks in at 2.7 gigabytes, which means that they used a 4 gigabyte cartridge. The cartridge revision ends in 000, and it has version 1.0.0 on the cart. Now, there is a patch available, and I would recommend it. It takes the game to version 1.0.4 and clocks in at 2.1 gigabytes. Now, it addresses a wide variety of fixes and tweaks across the entire game, but the key thing that it adds are two additional bonuses. One is the Not So Impossible Lair mode, which adds checkpoints into the final stage and makes it a bit more doable. Trust me, if you try playing it without it, you'll realize why this was added in. And they also added in the 8-bit soundtrack for all the 2D levels. You can access this in the pause menu of each stage. And while the bass music is absolutely gorgeous, it is really cool to hear an 8-bit rendition of each song. Now, the raw, unpatched version of the game has been tested by doesitplay.org, and in fact, the game will play completely offline and does not require the patch download in order to complete it. But, like I said, I would recommend the patch in this case because the bonuses definitely enhance the game. Now, in a little bit of a bonus for this video, I'm also going to cover the physical version of the original Yooka-Laylee for the Nintendo Switch. Now, while I don't normally cover games from limited run games, I felt this would be a prime time to go ahead and cover this particular release, especially in light of the recently released Yooka-Replaylee, which is a full-blown remake of this particular game. As I mentioned earlier, while the Impossible Lair is kind of a spiritual successor to Donkey Kong Country, Yooka-Laylee is a spiritual successor to Banjo Kazooie. This game was originally done as a Kickstarter and definitely had some rough edges when it first launched. I very much enjoyed this game when I played it on the Nintendo Switch, but I can also see where people had problems with it, and why it made sense for Playtonic to go back and do a full-blown remake of it. When it comes to the physical version of the game, the base version of the game clocks in at 5.2 gigabytes, and it was put on an 8 gigabyte cartridge. The cartridge revision ends in 000 and has version 1.0.0 on it. There is a patch available that takes the game to version 1.2.0 and clocks in at 2.9 gigabytes. Once again, doesitplay.org did test this game in its original base form, and it is fully playable offline and does not require the patch in order to play. Now, unlike the versions that were released on the PS4 and the Xbox One, the Switch version did have the Spit and Polish update on cart, which had a ton of quality of life improvements that were needed for the game. So that's a huge plus. The 2.9 gigabyte patch specifically adds in the 64-bit tonic. Now, tonics in the series are something that you can enable that will actually change the game across the board. Like in some cases, you can have a black and white mode. Other cases, you can have like a multicolor mode. In the case of the 64-bit tonic for the original Yooka-Laylee, it basically changes the entire game's graphics, so it literally looks like an N64 game, complete with low-res textures, the CRT filter, the whole 9 yards. And because it affects the entire game, that is pretty much the reason for the larger patch. As I said, this is not required in order to play it, but it is a very cool feature to actually mess around with. Seeing all the characters and levels in the low-res format, and very much looking in like the low-poly N64 style, it's pretty cool. Now I'm curious, have any of you played Yooka-Laylee or Yooka-Laylee in the Impossible Lair? I'm honestly curious to see where people stand on this particular series. Also, are you going to be playing the Yooka-Replaylee remake? Let us know in the comments down below. If this video helped you and you'd like to see more, please subscribe and hit that like button. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you later.